and understanding what it is.
Okay, great. Thank you for that input. I do also believe that that would be equally valuable. And Yuri, yes, thank you for your comment too. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Don, I see your, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Selena.
Hi, how are you? This is Selena.
Good.
So I see what you have: administrator, data manager, teachers, project coordinator. If you can have something that is just for testing stuff, like we have a lot of proctors.
Yes.
And I noticed that they were mixed in there. So maybe that could be one of your categories as well.
Okay.
Or whoever is, because those are truly who they need a lot of technology training. And they seem to be asking questions and they weren't sure.
Yes, and thank you, Selena, for that comment, because I could see where an hour-and-a-half proctor session would be ideal, and because then you figure you're cutting out all of the, creating sessions or how sessions are created or registering stations, because essentially proctors walk in and really all they need to know and understand very well is where to go to sign in, start a session, administer tests, and stop the session. And just role play that over and over until, So, very good. I agree with that. Great. Okay, so moving on, room monitors. We just had a comment about room monitors, and I don't know if any of you want to chime in about that. I know that just from my observation, I saw that some room monitors were checking people in inside the room, which I think caused more confusion. And so we're going to do our best to position them outside the room. So that's, and there was we'll get further down in the comments, but this was technology trainers should help out in passing out the handouts, because that was another issue of having handouts available at the check-in table. And it seemed like handouts were being taken when they shouldn't have been taken. And so and in this way, technology trainers, that will give you an opportunity to just give that personal meet and greet, with participants before the session starts. I think that would be a very nice gesture.
Yeah. Could I just make a comment, Dawn?
Yes.
One of the things about the handouts is that sometimes when you give all the handouts, they start glancing and looking through it, and it disrupts whatever conversation you're having at the beginning. So I'm a firm believer that the handout should be given as the next material that we're going to discuss, versus allowing them to go through the whole handouts because they get distracted. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, Veronica, thank you for that. And that was actually kind of repeated through the various input areas. Yeah, so that was definitely a prominent recommendation. So we will definitely take that into consideration for next year.
Dawn, I have something to piggyback off that.
Sure.
So, part of me, likes the fact that as a part, because I always like to put myself in their shoes. And so if, as a participant, if I had a handout, see the difference is I noticed that with what we had in our handouts along with what we actually presented, they were different. So they were very long. So if the handout was very detailed, then it worked fine. But because it was a lot more detailed than what we were presenting, people were getting really lost. And that's where, I think it was Veronica that just talked. So I think that's where we kind of got a little bit of a mix-up.
Okay.
And a little bit of a struggle. I personally like handouts when I'm a participant because it helps me make notes. It helps me,
I think we lost you there, Netta.
If it's
Hi, Netta, where you're cutting out. So, yeah. So maybe if you could just, I know, hopefully you can hear me. If you can just kind of write up a little bit in an email, I'll be sure and include that with the final debrief notes. And then Yuri, I didn't want to pass up your comment. Could we do an evaluation questionnaire prior to registration to the lab, just to gauge the TE level of participants. So Yuri, do you mean to an evaluation questionnaire to the technology trainers or to potential attendees registering for Summer Institute? Pre-test the attendees. Oh, okay. During the live session, right?
So, Dawn, I kind of wrote this in my questions, in my responses yesterday. And what I said is, if we kind of gave an assessment when we set out the descriptions of what was going to be happening, if you know this, this, and this isn't for you. If you mean this, this, and this, then this is for you. So that we have a better idea of what's going to be in the session, and they're not going to be one for which they're either prepared or underprepared.
Okay. Okay. Sounds
so
good.
They might about how to do this, you know how to do that. So this is not for you. You don't know how to do it. This is for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And that, you know, this is all good discussion, folks, because this also goes well with when we had our debrief with the registration team, and because they were so inundated with questions, specific questions of, and primarily needing, you know, at a loss really for helping participants decide what was best for them. Yeah, so, okay, let's see, and then I'll just kind of go through this here, delivering training materials. Our training materials, they're going to not deliver them all at once. They're going to deliver them just prior to the meeting session, so there's no confusion in materials. We'll have stanchions for the TE labs, just like we have for the online system labs, so that way all stations and all labs are identified. So we'll work on that, so you don't have to go around doing Post-it notes. And this was a biggie here. Wait for technology trainers to refresh the computers. So technology trainers will have a little bit more, you know, responsibility, as you know, such as being responsible for the handouts. So room monitors are not having to manage and monitor that. And then technology trainers also prepare the computers, you know, reset them back to square one in all the labs. So that way everything is fresh and ready to go before the lab session begins. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, because that's a model that you want to implement in your programs, in your labs, where you are administering CASA-C tests, that computers should always be the workspace area, the keyboard positioned properly, the mouse and the screen appropriate, and so forth. So that is a model you want to implement. There was a comment about, you know, making sure that, you know, to gauge your time or pace your time through the session, so that there is about at least a 10-minute Q&A session at the end. I know that's extremely challenging, but if at all possible, to do that. And then this right here, just allowing participants in. Well, we'll try to work on this, folks, and support you in not allowing participants in that shouldn't be there. So now I want to get to your comments, but before I do, are there any comments, remaining comments about the CASA staff input
Yes.
to the debrief? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, going back to number 5 with the handouts and what we give them, and I like what you had, which is the delivery outline, the plan, to have that more, to give it to the participants kind of as an agenda, so they know what's going on in each step of the session. Now, when we get the one with the print screens, that will be as a reference, a resource for them to use when they practice at their schools in their own time. Because like you know, piggybacking on what you guys are saying, I saw that too. They will go through the print screens and they will kind of get lost, and it was hard for them to pick up the pace to where the trainer was at. While if they have as an agenda, if they have the delivery outline, they know where they're at, and they will pay attention to the training in the steps, in the actual hands-on steps, instead of looking at the print screens and getting confused with that. and we can do both, but at least it will guide them through the steps that they go through in the session, like an agenda type of thing.
Okay. Very good comment. I will definitely include that. Thank you, Selena. Okay, so let's move on to the, your input as technology trainers. Now, I captured this probably about 20 till 9. So if any of you added your submitted your responses to the questionnaire, they're not included. You know, just before joining the meeting, they're not included here. So I'll be sure and review the questionnaire and add any additional comments that didn't get into this one here that we're reviewing. But what went well in the labs, everyone's comments was really great. And I tried to keep this as anonymous as possible, but I did have to add your name in here, Linda, so sorry about that, just so that they would understand who I was, and I hope you didn't mind there, but I thought it was important to include you here, that Connie, Martha, Oscar, and Linda were able to get through the entire TE Basics package and more. So that's kudos. That's pretty darn good. And then address the attendees' questions. And then also where they could find information if they were having trouble. So very good on that. The designated stations ready to go and the training materials. Now that was a comment on what went well in your labs. I think the designated stations was probably meaning the stanchions, identifying the stations, or maybe even the post-it notes on the stations, and the training materials. What went well, the activity of grouping people by third-party system they use. I think that's perfect in that exchanging data session. That makes a whole lot of sense. The use of the training delivery outline. This goes along with Selena with what you are the training delivery outline to also provide that to participants. Here, and the trainers working off the flow of the application and not referring as much to the booklets and print screens that seem to add confusion to the attendees. So that goes along with what you were just describing, Selena. So I think that's an excellent suggestion that we'll definitely try out next year. And the setup of the labs, I think the setup of the labs was good as well. Internet connections by far, oh my goodness, were better than they ever have been in quite a number of years. And then here again too, this stepping away from the script while making sure all the objectives were met. I think this is important as well. And folks, as you become more proficient with the CASAS online system and the integration of TOPS Pro Enterprise combined with CASAS eTest Online, then you will be able to literally step away from the script and fill in details or bring out tips and tricks and so forth. So again, I want to express a big okay, that it is okay to step away from the script, and as long as you're staying on pace and on track and within the scope of the training, to bring in that additional information. And then icebreakers, yes, I think I don't know if any of you are here with us when I did the chicken dance.
I remember.
Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the chicken dance. I might bring that back. I don't know.
We want to see it again.
Yeah.
I'll watch.
You'll watch? Well, the key to that, or the point to that, was we really feel rather silly doing that, but the point being is that no question is too silly to ask. So don't feel embarrassed to ask questions throughout the training session. So because you won't feel any sillier than you did when you were doing the chicken dance. So anyway.
Hey, Dawn.
Yes,
No, I didn't do the chicken dance, but I did do an icebreaker of my own, and it seemed to really set the tone for the class. Everybody was very started off kind of quiet, and nothing was because I like to ask questions in the beginning to set the tone. I like to share an agenda. I like to do that kind of stuff. But when we did an icebreaker, it was like with paper airplanes. And it seemed to kind of give a comfortable feeling, so everybody was very just, relaxed to begin the training. And everybody got to know each other, and that was the idea is, we're all here, we're all from all over California, or maybe not outside of California, but we're all using the same, program. So how do we get to know each other and what our roles are? And so they were asking each other questions, they were getting to know each other, and it kind of, it didn't take up too much of our time because it was just kind of plugging in 2 minutes, 3 minutes throughout the training to introduce each other with their paper airplanes that they threw at each other in the beginning. So it doesn't necessarily need to be that, but I think like if you, when you gave us a little bit of that flexibility to do that in our trainings, I think it helped kind of give us a little bit of a lead to be able to be creative in each session and kind of, help our participants be a little bit more relaxed.
Very good. I'm so glad, Netta, that you shared that, and very good. So I would encourage everyone, to as much as you feel comfortable in doing, and if you come across an icebreaker through your training, through this next year before next Summer Institute that you'd like to try out, I agree wholeheartedly. I love icebreakers, and I think it really helps set the tone. So thank you. Okay, now some of the challenges that some of you came up with is pacing yourself through the training, and I think a lot of that is knowing the material ahead of time, and then because that way you'll be able to gauge what's up ahead, as well as be able to plan ahead. If you find that you're slipping behind, then knowing what's up ahead, you'll be able to identify parts where you can just omit and just bring reference to without doing hands-on step-by-steps, and just bypass that to move on, so in an effort to stay on task. And so I can't emphasize enough to review the material, run yourself through the material ahead of time on your own, and then make notes to yourself, so that way you'll have that knowledge ahead of time. That's very important. We tried to get the material to you soon enough before Summer Institute, but maybe it wasn't soon enough. So we'll try better on our end to get you material. My goal I'm setting is 1 month. 1 month before Summer Institute rather than 2 weeks before Summer Institute, because we know you're all so very busy, and it's very difficult to carve out extra time. So we will definitely, I already have my calendar reminders. So that way too, and so that you won't feel compelled that you have to go through everything. Okay, so I thought this was a good call, whoever provided this input, that to ask attendees to hold their questions at the end, because you were slipping behind, and that way you could do questions at the end and ensure that you got through the training content. That was a good trainer call to do, so I would keep that in mind for future reference if that went well. Yeah, the number of participants in the room, I agree. I liked it. Personally, I liked it when we had training, when there was only 20 to 25 participants in a room. A lot of it has to do with the hotel facilities and the rooms available. As you know, we're going to be back at the Town and Country next year. And so it's going to be back in those huge rooms. Now, I don't know if it's possible to divide those rooms in two, so you know how there's those three, well, primarily the two and then the one on the end, so we'll probably actually accommodate all three of those rooms at Town and Country. And I don't know if those individual rooms can be divided in half. We can certainly look into that and go from there, because probably the 50 in a room was rather challenging, and then the online system one was 40 participants. So we'll look into that and see what we can do. And here we've already covered this. Participants were too preoccupied with the handout materials, so we'll hold those to the end. I think that would be good. Let's see. Yeah, and we've already covered this. Doing the second session of basics, resetting the computer stations will be helpful. And let's see, yeah, I thought this was interesting. Some participants didn't return, and new ones, I don't know how new ones came in a 3-hour session, or maybe this was the 2 different sessions, I'm not sure. But here again, when the computer stations are not set back to the starting point, it does make it confusing to have everyone start off. Yes, go ahead.
Don, one of the ways that somebody came in halfway through was that they had been in the wrong session for the first half.
Oh, yikes. Now, you know, that's so interesting. I'm wondering why the room monitor didn't catch that when they were checking the person in.
Right, but I know that happened because I spoke with the person.
Okay, okay, all right. Okay, let's see, and yes, okay, and with the new HTML session, let's see, the time allowed for the ET Basics was not enough, being that we were presenting the HTML system. I think it will help next year to break it up into coordinators compared to proctors and have an hour-and-a-half session each of those. And what do you think about that, folks? I know earlier I just mentioned the basics will always be 3 hours, but maybe with regards to eTest Online, have a eTest coordinators and then eTest proctors. Okay, Linda, thank you for that comment.
Yes.
Don, you said that they 1.5 hours. I think at least it should be 2 hours. What I find is that they need a lot of hands-on practice, allowing them to make mistakes, allowing them to ask questions. So a hands-on training might require a little bit more than 1.5 hours.
1.5 hours, yeah. So
maybe minimum 2.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense, Veronica. And so I think it will help when we're basically revamping. I'm just going to call it revamping all of the lab session descriptions. We've recycled the same descriptions over a number of years, and I think it's overdue to just completely revamp them and identify the targeted audience, and with all of your input, I'm hoping that we can come up with the best lab sessions for next year. And
Dawn, I have another comment. So I think that's a great idea, breaking it up between coordinators and proctors. I like that, except, you know, in my sessions, I noticed that there were, you know, some teachers, there were some administrators, there were coordinators, proctors, and then there were just people like administrators that just wanted to be familiar you know, just the operation of the program itself. So if we're going to break it up to coordinators and proctors, I wonder if there could be even a third session, a smaller session, introducing or talking about just eTest as a general, you know, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a hands-on lab, I'm not sure. Just know that not everybody that's attending these sessions, I mean, most of them are coordinator proctors, but there's a lot of them that are support. So that's another suggestion.
Yeah, and I agree with that. We didn't have, you know, those of you may or may not know that Carol Farrell retired this year before Summer Institute, and so she, over the past years, has always done that overview session, just like what you're referring to, that didn't need to be in a hands-on lab session, and we didn't do that this year, and I think it might be good to consider bringing that back next year. The session that replaced the session that Carol used to do was a panel. Now the panel sessions were very well received, and it was basically going from paper to web-based testing, and so the panelists from different states really gave a great perspective. So I think that was, since that was so well received, we'll repeat that, but I think we also still need to bring back the overview session. I want to go back real quick because Yuri, you made a comment in the chat. Is it possible to have a the trainer session outside of Summer Institute? I would love to do that. CASAS is always a little bit hesitant on asking for your time when you are actually on your employer's time. So that is something that CASAS has to be very careful and cautious about. But I would love to do that, to have at least maybe meet 2 or 3 times over the course of the year leading up to Summer Institute with just technology trainers. For example, when we have a new release of the online system, maybe pull together the technology trainers and say, hey, these are the new features, this is how you use them, and so forth. I'll look into that more, Yuri. The rest of you, how about, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that you would be able to step away 2 or 3 times between now and next year for like an hour-long session to go over the applications and newest and features and so forth?
I think that's really helpful because I noticed that a lot of the support technology trainers in the room were unfamiliar with the actual database because they don't use it. You know, they were either really proficient in TE but not in ET. So I think a training of the trainers is really beneficial because if we're going to have support trainers in the room, they can at least support the entire group.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it will also be important to have like this type of go-to meetings where the team that is presenting kind of do a dry run of the whole session that they're going to be working together with, and maybe meetings like this and do a preset of the actual session before we go into, and we kind of have to put it together as we see it happening.
Yeah, and that
or support as we see it happening.
Right, and I hear that, and I think that would you know, my mention about trying to do all we can to get the training materials to you a month before Summer Institute. Yeah. I'll tag on to that to get the technology trainer schedule to you much earlier as well. So that way, not only can you as an individual trainer walk yourself through the training material, whether or not you anticipate being a lead trainer, a co-trainer, or a support trainer, I think everyone needs to be familiar and go through the steps themselves, you know, of the training material. Especially if you're a support trainer, you need to know the material that's being covered and offer support accordingly during the sessions. I believe that is the responsibility of, you know, being a technology trainer. And so, Selena, yes, we, rather than when we have the traditional meeting on Monday with the technology trainers, you know, breaking out into the 2 different teams, so to speak, and then switching, maybe it would be better to step away from that structure and rather Jay, you know, speaking, you know, at you, or me speaking at you for that hour and a half, rather just simply turn it over to you, giving you as the trainers the opportunity to sit down and powwow, you know, with those that you're going to be training with. And because I think that would work better. But in order to do that, we'll have to, I believe, meet ahead of time in these maybe hour-long sessions before Summer Institute to do the train the trainer session. You know, to make sure, because usually, you know, Jay and I, those are those opportunities where we basically tell you the latest and the greatest and the newest features and so forth. But if we can not spend the time on that Monday doing that and instead spend the time prior to Summer Institute, so you already know that information, then you come on Monday and have your own breakout sessions. I think that would really help. But how does the rest of you feel about that?
I think that's a great idea. We could meet on Sunday and go over most of us comes early anyway, those of us traveling far away. So I would not mind meeting on Sunday to go over the training for the next few days.
Okay. Well, by the way, I'm recording this. I kicked on the recorder after a little bit because I stopped taking notes because I thought I'm just going to simply listen to our recording and pull those comments as well as the comments in the chat and make a final debrief notes here. So, so thank you everyone for your input. Okay, so let's see. Yes, we always tend to have more material than can be covered, I think, during the session. So I think everyone's comment about using the materials as a reference and sticking to an outline during the sessions, but always let participants know where they can find the information, I think will work very well. And then here again, support trainers weren't, some support trainers may not have been as familiar enough with the e-test testing application. And so here again, it's very important, trainers, for you to train yourself, do some self-tutorials between now and next Summer Institute to become more familiar with the applications. Okay, so let's move on here. What can be done to improve Summer Institute next year? The setup of the projector and the screen. Yes, I agree. I was sad that I wasn't there or available to visit the training rooms ahead of time to see the setup and direct the hotel staff or whoever was setting up the projector and the podium and the table. And so now that we're going to be back at the Town and Country, usually I show up there on Sunday as they're setting up the rooms. And so I'll be mindful of that. Let's see. Someone had commented about recommend a class size of 25 participants. We can certainly look into that in my comment about being able to split those super large rooms. I don't know if that's possible, but we can certainly look into that. And here again, give handouts at the end, or maybe as participants are leaving the training. And so that way the participants are truly focused on the trainer and following the trainer's lead and not falling behind. Let's give that a try next year, folks. I think here again, you can see that was almost an overwhelming comment in all of these areas of the debrief. Basic sessions, yes, should be first timers only. Agree. So here again, revamping the session descriptions, making sure that the audience is clearly identified. Hopefully that will lend itself to a smoother training and maybe a more meaningful training for the participants as well as the trainers delivering. Let's see, set aside time to do a dry run with the technology trainers. Yes, here again, let's give that a try to do that ahead of schedule so that all agree with the steps that will take place and the challenges that they may face. Very good. Yes, and this will, the pre-training sessions are, seem like an overwhelming request for next year. Here again, limit the number of participants, hand out the training materials. Let's see, all that should be handed out. Oh, inside the training room. Okay. Yeah, many people were stopping by the tables and just helping themselves. Yeah, so that was an unfortunate occurrence, and so we'll try to avoid that next year. Inclusion of more focused areas, California payment points, data detective, advanced TE tips and tricks. So here again, when we put out the call for, well, just to give you a heads up, Jennifer Suarez usually sends out notification to all CASA staff in, I believe sometime in September, requesting session descriptions by October. So that way they can be written into the online registration system, all in an effort to make sure that online registration is ready to go by January 1st. So so it's only going to be in a couple of months, I'll send out an email to all of you asking for your input on session titles, session descriptions, and I'll also put in there, you know, the targeted audience, the recommended time, the number of participants that you recommend for that session, you know, and I'll give kind of a time frame to get all that back, so that way we can really consider maximizing the lab experience for next year's Summer Institute. Let's see, and yes, assess trainers in their knowledge area would be helpful. Jay and I were in assigning trainers to labs and so forth. It was more, you know, we know that you're using CASAS and so forth, maybe one application more than the other, but our hope and goal was that you as a trainer, if you felt that your knowledge was not quite up to par in one area or the other, that you would take it upon yourself to bring yourself up to par in those areas prior to Summer Institute. I'll leave that at that. Now, what other comments would you like to add? Some of the information in the training packets will need to be updated. If there are specific areas in any of the training material, folks, that you recall that were outdated or the information just didn't get down quite correct, could you please send that to both Jay and I so that we can make sure that those areas are addressed? I know that the online system, those modules, and I call them modules this year because we're going to provide online self-paced training modules with those booklets with video snippets, and so that was an overall plan in the making and the purpose of why the books for the online system labs were put together in that way. And so all of that material for the most part should be updated, but I suspect that there are some areas in there that just for running out of time and not being able to update, we didn't get everything updated accordingly. So it would help us if you could identify those areas with us. Let's see, and pretty much, let's see, accessibility of experienced trainers. I think that's pretty much it. You can see the other comments there. Be sure to save the date for next year, June 18 through 21. Summer Institute actually begins on the 19th, but we usually meet on the 18th, which is a Monday, and it is at the Town and Country. So any comments, folks, on all of these debrief notes? Thanks, Yuri. I'm glad it was a great experience. And we appreciate you being a part of the technology trainers. Everyone, we so sincerely appreciate you. Any other comments, folks?
I think it was a great conference. It keeps growing every year. It's more and more. Mm-hmm. So that is a very good sign. So kudos again to all of the CASAS team for putting all this together.
Great.
One suggestion is that even though I was there as a trainer, it still would have been nice if I could have attended at least one or two sessions during the Institute, because there were some other areas that I would have liked to have looked at to bring information back to my school, and I was the only one from my school there.
Yes, and you know what, Connie, thank you so much for bringing that comment to the team, because actually that was a discussion I'm realizing didn't get on the notes here, is that there was a comment from and you know how participants, they give an evaluation of the Summer Institute, and one of the comments from a participant is that they felt that there were too many trainers in the room. And I thought that was interesting, but So what if we have the smaller labs? Of course, we can certainly limit the amount of trainers in the rooms, and to maybe even just the two trainers, you know, doing the co-training together with the other trainer being the assistant. And that way it would free you up. We would certainly like to give you more time to attend other sessions, absolutely. And I do have to say I felt bad in scheduling. It was difficult in scheduling because we knew that we were short on trainers this year, and we were concerned about coverage in the labs, and but I believe that, you know, as you are all becoming, you know, more proficient with the online system, and having these targeted audiences and maybe the smaller sessions, that we can get by with scheduling you for maybe 2 labs at the most. I think that would be the goal, rather than scheduling you for 3 and 4 labs, whether you are a trainer, co-trainer, or support trainer. I think that if we could limit the labs that we assign you to maybe 2, that would really greatly free you up for enjoying the rest of the conference. So that definitely will be a goal of ours next year. And if you know, in your networking with other folks throughout the year, if there is someone who stands out to you that you believe that we could invite as a support trainer next year, and with the hope that maybe they will join the technology, becoming a co-trainer or a trainer, that would be great. I think we need to increase our pool of technology trainers so that way it frees you up and you're not overworked during Summer Institute. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, Connie. I appreciated that comment. Let's see. Oh, can the technology training count to get the free registration? Christina, let's see. Can the technology training count? Your registration for Summer Institute should have been comped. If you were charged for registration, you also do BIT. Yeah, you shouldn't have been charged for registration. So if you were, we owe you. So let's.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Yeah, I know that refunds happen after Summer Institute, so hopefully they're still processing those. Although I think I would have thought they would have finished it by June 30. So if you have not been reimbursed for registration, be sure and let us know. Let's see. And yes, Netta, to get these session evaluations, I'll follow up with Jennifer Suarez. She's the one who provides and it sends emails with the evaluations to the trainers. So I'll follow up with her on that. And let's see, I think is there anyone who's put information in the chat that I might have missed? Trying to keep up with the chat as well. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up, folks. Thank you again so much for your time, and we really appreciate you. This was a great Summer Institute, and thanks for joining today. And I'll send out the final debrief notes to everyone.
Thank you, Dawn. Have a great one.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome, folks. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.